One of the problems writers must face when adapting the story of a football club for the stage is that the story rarely ends. Unlike, say, Gone with the Wind, where Scarlett O'Hara's determination to face life with defiance despite the departure of her man stamps an indelible full stop on proceedings. At what point do you stop telling the story of LFC? The answer, as far as YNWA is concerned, is to put it in the hands of Nicky Walt. This is a man with the dual passions of storytelling and being cop, and his story becomes an evening of triumphs, stark, horrendous tragedy, and occasional parallels with the city's social history. That aside, the central premise is a little loose. The Kelly family gathers to say goodbye to their great-granddad, and a potted history of Liverpool Football Club ensues, which feels at times like the world's most complicated PowerPoint presentation. But there is such heart and undiluted Scouse camaraderie on show here that by the end of 2.5 hours you'd forgive it anything. It straddles a curious gap between play and musical, underlined by Mark Walter's set featuring a live band section to the left, a typical Reds pub to the right, and a representation of the standing cop centre stage with large screen behind it. It's on this screen that clips from Liverpool's greatest victories and defeats play out. The headshots of such greats as Ron Yeats, Ian Callaghan, Shankly, Paisley, Kenny, and even the Spice Boys in the 90s vintage Armani suits are projected to enthusiastic applause, and the occasional infographic even pops up to place everything in its historical context. It works well, especially if your knowledge of the club is limited and you're there at the invitation of a passionate Red. There's no danger on even the most passing football fan getting left behind here. Much of the story is told with tweaked lyrics to songs such as The Leaving of Liverpool, Part of the Union, and a blues number, literally, as Evertonians rejoice in the beginning of Liverpool's 8th-season relegation to the 2nd Division. And if the mood takes you, please don't worry about joining in. Luckily, with a cast that includes Mark Morgan, Lindsay German, and Jake Abraham, there's enough vocal horsepower and personality on stage to give everything the melodic kick and cheeky twinkle required to keep the history lesson going and prevent the Liverpool spirit flagging. With the arrival of Shankly, the breakthrough 65 FA Cup victory, and heady days of almost guaranteed league and European success each season, the mood is buoyant. Even the political climate of the 80s, which brought dark days, socially, to the city, are only hinted at as the trophy cabinet continues to creak under its own weight. But that sucker punch, the moment where the mood in the room tangibly changes, begins with the events of Hazel in 1985, recounted as a conversation in a bar between Morgan and Abraham. And then, the moment any football fan would hand back every one of their club's honours not to have happen. The Hillsborough tragedy can't stay untold in a history of Liverpool FC, and goodness knows how long it took all to find a way to chronicle those hideous days with the dignity its victims and their families deserved. But he does so with real sensitivity. At first with an old Irish song called Black is the Colour, then a wrenching monologue from German about a mum who never saw her boy come home that day and still has trouble listening to a football match. It's possibly her finest moment on the Royal Court stage. Certainly her most powerful. With the 90s and the dawn of the 21st century seeing longer gaps between trophies, it's the miracle of Istanbul which becomes the last major milestone for the club, although the arrival of a certain Mr. Klopp gets one of the biggest cheers of the night. Home-baked Anfield, the story of a matchday pie shop fitting 125 years of history into 2 hours, does mean that some areas get overlooked. There's scarcely a mention of Keegan Agrobala, for example, but then again, when was a football club ever about the individuals? Casual fans may get a little beady about the way every other former player's name gets an Oprah Winfrey-style round of applause and cheers towards the end of the show. It felt as though it happened at every second line in the final act, but that's what the game's all about. Passion. Although it's pitched as a show anyone can enjoy, it's doubtful those whose footballing loyalties lie away from Anfield would consider this the best night they've ever spent in a theatre. But if you're still confident that Herr Klopp is the one who's going to bring the lads back to their glory days, you'd best book a seat near the front.